Hi, so this video was requested to talk about bioengineering as a pre-med student, and I was a bioengineer for 2 years in undergrad, so I could shed some light on this matter. The question was like if it's feasible to be a pre-med bioengineer, and I think it really depends, number one, on what kind of person you are. For some people, bioengineering and engineering is kind of like it's their forte, that's what they're good at, so it's pretty easy for them. For some people, like it's a struggle, and it depends also like how hard it is at your school. At my school it was pretty difficult, and engineers like kind of take like a different series for everything. So like my organic chemistry and my gen chem was separate from what the life science people took, and it was pretty much accepted that ours was harder than the life science ones. Like, not trying to like say like we had this whole feud like, oh, whatever, North Campus versus South Campus. Like, I think generally it was pretty accepted that the engineering version of things were a lot harder, so I took a different physics, different math, different OChem, different Gen Chem, and it made things harder. I was also expected to take more classes per semester quarter because we had more classes to finish, and other like the life science majors would be taking less classes. So that's another thing to consider, that I'd have a not only were my classes a little bit harder, I had to take more classes at a time. But eventually I got the hang of it. It took a while. It took like, I mean, I think sophomore year, ironically, like I switched after my second year because I didn't think that I was getting enough of like things outside of engineering, and I also wanted the time to do other things outside of engineering. But like I got the hang of it, and eventually it became that engineering was easier for me than like I remember my OChem class was like relatively straightforward, easy to me, even though it was supposed to be really hard. But then intro to psych, I almost got a B in it. I was like, what is this? Like, how does this make any sense? But it showed me that I had a little weakness in that I needed to focus on. So I think for someone who's considering bioengineering as a pre-med, you have to take into account, you have to try it out. I think if it's something that you're set on, like I liked bioengineering because I thought it'd prepare me for the MCAT, which I think it did. It really challenged me. And I also was like, well, what if I end up not wanting to be a doctor? Then I can be a bioengineer, which is, it's not a bad degree to have, to be honest. So you need to like think about, do you like this major? If it really interests you, I think that if you're interested in the subject, it's a lot easier to learn it, and it's a lot easier to push yourself to study for it. So that's something that you should consider. You should also look at how hard it is at your school. Like maybe it's hard, it was really hard at my school. Maybe other schools it's a little bit easier. Certain majors might be harder, easier, depending on what school you're at. So maybe go ask like your bioengineering society, like, oh, is this like a good major that you think I might be able to do well in? I would try and make sure that like you're set on it, because once I became a bioengineer, there's a certain point, like once you had taken a certain class, you really couldn't switch. So like, or you couldn't switch from like the harder chemistry series to like the easier one. So I kind of was like, well, if I wanted to switch to like the easier like life science chemistry version, I wasn't able to once I took a certain class. So you need to take that into account. Be like, okay, well maybe I'll try it out, but if I don't like it by this certain point, like I need to switch. So that's something to consider. And also, I know one friend, he ended up, I think he took 5 years to get the bioengineering degree, which I think let him take 3 classes a quarter, it let him do research, and I think he's probably going to be fine. So if you want to do that, that's an option too. But I think the struggle with bioengineering is like a lot of engineers do get lower grades because, I mean, I think everyone always would tell me that the engineering average grade was a lot lower than like what a pre-med needs. Pre-meds apply to med school, and like I would see schools with like 3.8s as averages. That's not the average GPA for engineers. So I think the teachers grade harder because they know engineers don't need to have like really high GPAs, and the classes are just harder and they grade differently. So that's something to consider. Like, you're going to have to work a lot harder, but you also still have to do all the extracurriculars that you need for med school. Like, it's not just enough to get a good GPA. So you need to consider, like, can I take all these classes? Can I still do all these extracurriculars and like do well on all this stuff? And if you can do that as a bioengineer, then I encourage you to do it. But I also think it's like, it's a challenge, and some people might be better not doing it, and you also have to see like can I do this? Am I interested in it? And just maybe try it out, get some advice from people at your school specifically. Um, but if you really like it, you might end up doing super well. And I think it looks pretty good that you could do well in a bioengineering major. But at the end of the day, I don't think med schools are going to be like if you had to choose between a 3.5 in bioengineering and a 4.0 in a different major, go with the 4.0. For speaking like strictly for med school related stuff, not like what's the right thing to do for like your life. I'm saying like if you want to be a doctor and that's it, I would go with the GPA, like the highest GPA. So that is my advice, and let me know if you have any questions.